Happy New Year! What's up, guys? So, what is in a year? That's my question today. I know it's 365 days. I know that there is also a Chinese New Year, which is a totally different thing that'll take more time to get into. But what is the new year? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for me? There's all kinds of things coming on, and we'll talk about them in the future of this video. Alright, let's get to it. What's up, guys? My name's Splice Knight. Welcome back to Reflections, the show where we take a simple idea, expand it, think about it, and kind of digest where that logically leads. Today's concept will be something I'm sure you're very familiar with, the idea of New Year's and, in general, time. Because while we have a number of different methods to catalog time, whether it is calendars, weekly reminders, and anniversaries and things like that, the way humans experience time isn't quite what you're probably expecting. And I feel like this is something that I've been mulling over for the last while, but I've really only been able to express recently, and that is this idea of an emotional connection to time for human beings. What I mean by that is we don't ourselves, unless we have the logical backup like a calendar or some measurement of time and space to properly gauge something, the way we interpret time is based on a couple of different things, which is scientifically considered the circadian rhythm, which is our day to night understanding, which is primarily based on the filtration of light. As light comes up and the dawn starts, that is when we were naturally more accustomed to waking up, starting our day, getting things done. Or if we're early risers, that circadian rhythm may be slightly different, as well as those who are more accustomed to working and being more active at night. Now, those are a whole nother thing to really get into as far as to the specifics on why that is, but to kind of grossly oversimplify a lot of what I'm talking about, the idea of a circadian rhythm is a sense of pattern. Now, human beings are massive with patterns. It's kind of everywhere in society, and it's actually kind of a reflection of the natural world that we come from. And of course, obviously, there's the distinction of natural world being the concrete jungle that we have created versus the naturopathic earth created world that is already there. That's a whole nother argument, we're not going to get into that. But more specifically, we're talking about the idea of the natural patterns that we see in the world. Whether this is the cycle of winter, summer, autumn, spring, which is not in order by the way, that happens to course through countries, which again, we have to specify the fact that in certain places it occurs differently and to less evident extremes. For example, where I live in Canada, there is a very distinctive summer, winter, spring, and autumn, spring and fall seasons, and the reason this is because we experience more dramatic changes in the weather and climate. Now, this can actually manifest in intense winters, blistering hot summers, but there are also places where the changes are much more subtle and mild. It could be a change of 10 to 15 degrees even, which could still, for example in California, go from absolutely blistering hot to slightly bearable by Canadian standards. Now, the reason I bring this up is because these are patterns that we observe in different places, and our approach to those changes are different, but also similar. What I mean by that is our approaches are understanding a procession of a time and evolution. Now, one of the easiest ways to really see time visibly is to watch someone else grow, or yourself grow even, whether it's growing a beard, a mustache, your hair out longer, whether it is seeing your face change, the way you act around others versus how you used to act, which is really kind of clear when you have the ability of Facebook to remind you of some of the uncomfortable things you've done in the years past, or some of the cool things that you've done and people you've met in the past. Now, the interesting thing about that is it gives you a more relevant context than we are naturally able to understand. So it gives us a better understanding of how we've changed. But a lot of that has to do with the stuff that we remember specifically and how we experience time as individuals is more emotionally based things that have an emotional resonance with us as people are more likely to be remembered and used as our own personal milestones in time. For example, a great way to tell a year in different countries is the emotional events or the world-changing events that you hear about. For example, 9/11. We don't necessarily have any other reason to remember that other than the fact that the commemorative thing, the emotional tagline that pulled a huge group of people from all aspects of life together in unity in an emotional discharge, was a massive tragedy. Now, the reason that this pulled anyone together was that it had a massive emotional resonance. And this extends as far as the way that the Bush administration handled the situation, the targeting, the way that it was portrayed. It's been demonstrated from several different angles. The emotional impact of this singular moment resonates across the world with so many different people, and that is why it is such a lasting memory. Whereas other things, like the Pulse nightclub shooting, resonate heavily in the LGBTQ2+ community. And the reason that is because it's a huge and very specifically targeted emotional event for that group. Now, my point with all of these specific examples is to more accurately demonstrate the idea of how humans accurately understand time. They understand it through the emotional weight of events. While we might have our calendar, that's based on an almost acceleration of the idea of a circadian rhythm through the actual cycles of the sun around us. That is to say, our revolution of the Earth around the sun. That is what our lunar year is. That's what it's based on, and because of that, we've understood it based on a pattern, not quite an emotional, but a clear, natural pattern that has a massive effect on us as people. It changes over time. It changes what patterns and events in the winter, summer, and other sort of mid-seasons, what occurs in those specific times, why they happen that way, what happens with the general fauna and flora of that time, and a lot of specific occurrences, which for a more base level human understanding will have emotional resonance, in the sense that when certain things start occurring with other animals, this indicates a change in the way that we have to essentially work with our environment. Now, obviously, with the more mild examples that I listed before, in California, for example, the changes are less pronounced and less dramatic, so the need to really do anything or change the approach that you have towards your own personal living isn't as dramatic. But that's the interesting thing. In this new year, let's understand that the 365 days of that year aren't really what define it. It's really the emotional cadence, the emotional resonance that is actually present through the entire year that makes that year meaningful. Now, why a lot of people probably think that this year was insane, crazy, and really, really long was, at least in part, and I hate to again make it all focused on America because it really, really isn't all about America. But the insane whirlstorm of Trump news and news about the man in the new office, this whole crazy media firestorm that has started right at the end of 2016 and in the progenesis of 2017, where he came into office and dominated headlines. These things had massive emotional resonance for a massive group of people. Like, to give you context, even the northern country to America is affected by it, and a lot of what goes on. So to understand the crazy amount of emotional resonance that this has, and the fact that he's able to spread his emotional resonance to a worldwide audience through his tweets and a lot of the things that he has made positions on, whether it is the moving of the embassy into a very hotly contested area, and it's actually started more civil war action and essentially escalation of violence. It's really kind of built this impression that Trump is emotionally dominating the world scene at the moment. And honestly, that is what makes this year feel so long, or last year, depending on when you're watching this video, because I will put it up on New Year's. That is what makes this year feel so long, is the emotional resonance, the emotional weight that we're constantly being bombarded with. Now, normally we kind of weed some of these things out and use it as a way to parse the way our time and our concept of time passing actually affects us. But in this particular instance, where so much groundbreaking and dramatic information is happening that is so highly relevant to us and emotionally cognizant, and therefore essentially being brained into our psyche as something we have to be aware of for dramatic future events. That is essentially why Trump has dominated the news scene of, as I've said, of late, and of course why he will in the future, and why he will make such a serious impact, because the emotional resonance with the people that are currently growing with him as their president, as their person of representation, whether they want him to be or not, he is, and that is hugely relevant to their own emotional psyche. And that is why this year has felt so goddamn long. Anyway, guys, with that incredibly over-the-top, ranty sort of explanation as to how time works in the mind of the regular person, as opposed to the idea of the calendar that was actually in part inspired by Julius Caesar and the Gregorian calendar foundation that we had and ended up bringing into modern day. Rather than that, it's an emotional resonance that really sort of creates these milestones in our mind. This is why something like a massive holiday that is celebrated by the larger majority of a group, like Saturnalia, or as it's commonly known now, Christmas, which is another video I would love to go into, but I kind of missed the mark on. But I will go into it in the new year at some point with a lot of other stuff that I really want to get into. I apologize for not posting for a couple of weeks, guys. It will hopefully not happen again, or at least not for a while, because I'm trying to keep as consistent with videos as I can, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that I cannot quite disclose, that is keeping me more focused on my personal life and issues going on there. So with that all going on, guys, I just wanted to say Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you happen to celebrate in that bracket, and also enjoy the new year according to the Gregorian calendar of the new 365 days ahead of you that you have to make an emotional impact. Remember, guys, that is one of the major ways to really make this year memorable coming. So please don't forget to enjoy everything that you do, and if you enjoy this video, remember to keep that emotional resonance peaked. You want to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you hear of new videos that come out hopefully every week, if not bi-weekly. And of course, if you want to follow on a more day-to-day basis, I'm always on my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you guys want to talk to me directly, you can direct message me, or you can just send me a comment on some of my posts, or whatever you want to do. I am always there to talk to you guys, so I do appreciate any and all of your time. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Splice Knight, and I will check you guys out in the next video.